Good day, class, and thank you for attending our first lecture for your analysis of urine and body fluids. So, for our first meeting, we're going to tackle the lesson one, the renal anatomy physiology, as well as the different renal function. So, for the entire start of the subject or the course of this AUBF, we will be focusing more on urine. And for you to understand urine class, you need to go back to how it would be formed. And to do that, we need to understand the kidneys, which I will discuss in our meeting. So during the discussion, please feel free to take screenshots of the PowerPoint. I will also be giving the recording of the lecture after the discussion. Also, fill up your handouts, which you can use as your reviewer, and it would also serve as your uh, grade for your class participation. Let's begin. Now, the urinary system class is composed of four main components. So, when we deal with the formation of urine, there are four main components involved. The first one is the kidney class. The kidney class is basically the where your urine is formed from the filtration of blood. Remember, if you recall in your anatomy physiology, kidney class is the filter of our body. If asked what does it filters blood, and from that filtration of blood class, one of the excretory products, one of the excretory products would be urine. Now, the second component is ureters. They carry the urine to the bladder. So, the ureters class they serves as a tube or a passageway that carries the urine from the kidney to the bladder. And the third one, the bladder glass, wherein it would store the urine produced. And the last component would be the urethra that delivers the urine for excretion outside the body. So again, let me repeat, the four main components of your urinary system are the kidneys, the ureters, the bladder, and the urethra. Para tandaan nyo, use the acronym KUBU. KUBU. Kidney, ureters, bladder, urethra. Let's continue. Now let's talk about the kidney class. So the kidney class is a paired organ. So this is a paired organ. Dalawa yan lagi class. Hindi yan isa. Dalawa yan. It is a paired organ situated on the posterior wall of the cavity found on each side. So kung ito yung posterior wall ng abdominal cavity mo, nung stomach part mo, you can find them on the left and right side. They are situated on each side of the vertebral column. Sa gilid ng vertebra nyo, class. Diyan sa tagiliran nyo. They are in a pair. Dalawa yan, magkabilaan, left and right on each side. Now, the kidney class, take note of the shape, is a bean-shaped organ. And its medial border, when you say medial border, yung sa gitna, it would contain an indentation. Pag sinabi mong indentation, this is like a cut or a groove. So if you take a look at the kidney, tingnan nyo to, you would find here an indentation. This indentation class is known as the renal. Yung cut na yan or yung indentation na yan is known as the renal hilus. Through which class nakakonect dyan yung mga arteries and veins nyo. If you take a look at this picture, ito yung indentation na sinasabi niya. Yan. Yung indentation na yan, that is the renal hilus. Now, located in the renal hilus class are the arteries and the veins. The renal artery would enter the kidney, and the renal vein and the ureter would leave the kidney. So, may question ako, class. So, may question ako. When we talk about arteries, my question is, what type of blood? So, very basic question to. Dapat alam nyo to. What type of blood is being carried. So what does your arteries contain, or what type of blood does your artery contain or being carried to? So anyone could answer, class. If you answer wrong, okay lang naman yun. There's nothing wrong, just try. So I'll give you a few questions. Anyone who can answer, mag-volunteer na lang or I'll call someone. So the answer to this, class, if it's arteries, they carry or they contain oxygenated blood. And if they are oxygenated blood, their color tends to be bright red. So lagi niyong tandaan yan. And then for the renal vein, for veins naman, so they contain deoxygenated blood. So pag sinabi mong deoxygenated blood, this is the one that contains carbon dioxide. So ito naman yung ilalabas ng lungs natin. So the deoxygenated blood would go back to the lungs to be excreted, excreting the carbon dioxide. So very important, class, that the arteries would be able to bring oxygenated blood to the kidneys kasi 'di ba, remember, oxygen allows the survival of our cells. So yun. So yun yung renal hilus nyo, class. It's an indentation that would contain the renal artery and the renal vein as well as the ureter. Now each kidney, class, is covered by a capsule and capped with an adrenal gland, which is an endocrine gland. So yung kidney nyo, each kidney, class, yung mga kidneys nyo yan, meron yang layer dito known as the capsule. Sa capsule, meron siyang capsule, and it tends to have an adrenal gland, which is very important, class, because itong adrenal duct is an endocrine gland. Remember, ang purpose ng endocrine gland nyo, one of the functions of an endocrine gland is for homeostasis. So pag sinabi nyo homeostasis, this is maintaining balance in the body. So kapag nasira yung homeostasis ng body nyo, there could be problems and that can lead to diseases. Now, they are essential for maintaining homeostasis, including the regulation of body fluids. So ito yung sinasabi ko, class, the importance of homeostasis. They regulate body fluids, acid-base balance, electrolyte balance, and the excretion of waste products. Now, they are also concerned with the maintenance of blood pressure. So, ang purpose pa ng kidney nyo is that it can maintain the BP. And erythropoiesis. Now, when we talk about erythropoiesis, from the prefix erythro would refer to red blood cells, and poiesis meaning the creation. So, when we talk about erythropoiesis, this is the creation or the production. Let's just use the word production. The reason for this, class, bakit ang kidneys nyo, the reason why your kidneys is involved in erythropoiesis or RBC production is because, class, the kidneys, kindly write this down, the kidneys would produce the hormone erythropoietin, which is also responsible for RBC production. So that's the reason why involved siya sa erythropoiesis. Your kidney would produce the hormone erythropoietin, which is responsible for RBC production. Now, renal function, class, is influenced by A, blood volume, blood pressure, and composition. B, hormones from the adrenal and your pituitary gland. So do take note of that. So renal function is influenced by blood volume, pressure, composition, hormones from the adrenal and pituitary gland. Now let's talk about the two layers of the kidneys, class. Now the first layer of the kidney, class, is known as your cortex. So the cortex is also known as the outer layer. So itong part na to, ito yung cortex niya. Lahat to, class, lahat tong nasa labas na to, itong area na to, This is known as your cortex. Yung open space na yan, yung outer layer na yan, that's known as the cortex. Now, another layer is the medulla. The medulla class refers to the inner layer. So, ito yung medulla nyo. Itong mga to class, this uh, sac-like layers. These are the medullas. These are inner layer composed of several pyramids. So, pag tinignan mo sila, mukha silang pyramid. Di naman ganun ka-triangular, but you get the shadow or the appearance of a pyramid, di ba? Para siyang triangular in shape, but not fully triangular. So this is composed of several pyramids. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. At most 6, sa iba more than 6, depende sa kidneys. So yun, medulla is the inner layer composed of several pyramids. And then each kidney class would contain approximately 1 to 1.5 million functional units called nephrons. So kung sa lungs nyo, di ba, meron ang functional units ng lungs nyo are alveoli. For the kidneys naman, ang functional unit nila are nephrons. So nephrons class are the functional units and they are approximately 1 to 1.5 million. So ganun sila kadami class. Now, the human kidney would contain two types of nephrons. So may dalawang klase. There are two types of nephrons class. The first one is the cortical nephron, making 85%. So siya yung pinaka-majority. It is the majority of nephrons, approximately 85%, situated primarily in the cortex class of the kidney. So dito sa layers na to class, you would find here cortical nephrons. Kaya nga siya tinawag na cortical nephrons kasi nakikita siya sa cortex, di ba? Related yung cortical sa word na cortex. So, they are found in the cortex class and their function is for the removal of waste product and reabsorption of nutrients. So, take note of that. Nire-remove niya yung waste product and reabsorb niya yung nutrients. So, that's your cortical nephron. The second type of nephron is the juxtamedullary nephron. Take note of this class. They tend to have longer loops of Henle that extend deep into the medulla of the kidney. Their primary function is concentration of the urine. So, ang loop of Henle nyo kasi, this one, itong picture na to. Para ma-appreciate nyo siya. Inside the cortex class and even the medulla, may mga nephrons dyan. Now, this nephrons class would have different, para silang mga veins or para silang mga passageways, mga tubes. And one known tubes there is your loop of Henle. Now, itong loop of Henle na to, they are found in the nephrons. Now, specifically all nephrons. Now, one difference lang kasi class, sa juxtamedullary nyo, the loop of Henle's are longer. And take note that they extend until or deep into the medulla. So hanggang sa loob-loob ng medulla. And their primary function is the concentration of the urine. So ulitin ko, all of your nephrons class have loops of Henle. The only difference is that sa juxtamedullary, they have a longer loop of Henle and they extend deep into the medulla. Their function is the concentration of urine. Let's continue. Now let's talk about the four renal functions. So there are four renal functions class. The first one is renal blood flow. The second one is glomerular filtration. The third one is tubular reabsorption. And the last one is tubular secretion. So that's your four renal functions. Renal blood flow, glomerular filtration, tubular reabsorption, and tubular secretion. Now, let's first tackle the first renal function, yung renal blood flow class. Now, for renal blood flow, there is a steps. These are the steps in renal blood flow. It begins with the renal artery, the afferent arteriole, the glomerulus, the efferent arteriole, the peritubular capillary, the vasa recta, and the renal vein. So let me explain them step by step. So let's start with the renal artery class. So as you're aware earlier in the discussion, your renal artery would contain oxygenated blood. So this is being supplied to the kidney, and the kidneys would receive approximately 25% plus of the blood pump through the heart at all times. So ganun kadami yung percentage class ng blood na na-receive ng renal ng kidneys natin. 25% of the total blood na napapump sa heart. Now the blood would now enter, so after entering the renal artery, magi-enter naman ito class sa different capillaries. And one of those capillaries is the afferent arteriole. So tingnan natin, may picture dito, balik tayo. Yung afferent arterioles niya, ito sila. Ito yung mga capillaries class. So we have here an efferent arteriole, ang liliit lang nila. And where's the afferent? Ito. Yan. So magkatabi lang yung class. So from the renal artery, pupunta na siya dun sa mga ano ng kidneys and nephrons. It would go to the different capillaries, afferent arteriole, efferent arteriole. So continue natin. So mag-enter siya from the renal artery to the afferent arteriole, and then it would flow through the glomerulus. Then after the glomerulus class, pupunta naman siya sa efferent arteriole. Now, sir, how do we differentiate afferent from efferent? Take note of this class. Smaller ang efferent arteriole nyo. So let me repeat. Efferent arteriole is smaller. So mas maliit siya na capillary. This is a smaller capillary compared to your afferent arteriole. So that's one way to differentiate them. So kung i-enlarge natin yung capillary, kunwari ito yung capillary class. This is the afferent. Tapos dadaan siya dito sa parang glomerulus. Kunwari ito yung glomerulus. E-exit naman siya ngayon in a smaller capillary known as the efferent arteriole. So, so after the efferent arteriole class, there will be an effect. So because magkaiba, there is a difference in the shape or in the size of the afferent and efferent arteriole, this would cause the creation of a pressure class. This pressure is known as hydrostatic pressure. Di ba nga, pag from a big tube or a big capillary, tapos bigla kang nag-switch into a smaller passageway. This would create pressure here. Para kang nagda-drive ng sasakyan class. Kung from a four lane, bigla ka nag-shift into a two lane. Ang mangyayari, yung mga sasakyan dito na four lane, magkokos sila ng pressure, magkokos ng blockage. Now, this hydrostatic pressure class produced from the different size of the afferent and efferent arteriole is important for glomerular filtration. And it also maintains consistency of capillary pressure and renal blood flow within the glomerulus. So, very important yung hydrostatic pressure niya, class. Important for filtration, consistency ng capillary pressure, and renal blood flow within the glomerulus. Now, before returning to the renal vein, bago siya pumunta ng vein, the blood from the efferent arteriole would now enter the peritubular capillary. So, nasa peritubular capillaries na siya, and then after that, it would go to the vasa recta. And it would flow slowly through the cortex and the medulla of the kidney close to the tubules. Then after that, take note of this class. The peritubular capillaries would surround the proximal and distal convoluted tubules, providing for the immediate reabsorption of essential substances from the fluid in the proximal convoluted tubule and the final adjustment of the urinary composition of the distal convoluted tubule. So, balik ulit tayo dun sa picture kanina para maintindihan niyo yung proximal convoluted tubule saka distal convoluted tubule. Asan na yun? Wait lang. Wala. Sorry. Wait. Anyways. So later explain ko na lang to class. So from the peritubular capillaries, yung peritubular capillaries nyo na, pag nandun na yung blood sa peritubular capillaries nyo, what happens is that there would be reabsorption of nutrients. What happens is that merong tubule dyan class, dalawang tubule, the PCT and the DCT. Si PCT nyo, si PCT nyo would reabsorb essential nutrients. While your DCT naman siya class, siya yung nag-finalize ng urinary composition. So later during the discussion, merong slide ako na magpapakita which essential nutrients are being absorbed by PCT, which essential nutrients are being absorbed by DCT. Now, the vasa recta are located adjacent to the ascending and descending loop of Henle in the juxtamedullary nephron. In this area class, the major exchanges of water and salt would take place. So, sa ascending and descending loop of Henle class, take note of this. This is where the major exchanges of water and salts would take place between the blood and the medullary insert tissue. This exchange now class would maintain the osmotic gradient or the salt concentration in the medulla, which is necessary for renal concentration. So pag tinanong kayo sa exam nyo, sa assessments nyo, which part of the kidney does the major exchange of water occurs? The ascending and descending loop of Henle. Pag tinanong kayo which part of the kidneys is responsible for maintaining osmotic gradient, ang sagot nyo itong loop of Henle, ascending and descending. Now, based on an average body size of 1.73 square meter of surface, the total renal blood flow is approximately 1200 ml per minute. And the total renal plasma flow would range between 600 to 700 ml per minute. So, ang average body size natin, class, this is a normal value, ha? Pag tinanong kayo, what is the normal average body size? It's a 1.73 square meter. Pag tinanong kayo, what is the normal total renal blood flow? 1 to ml per minute. Then total renal plasma flow, 600 to 700 ml per minute. So may computation yan later ituturo ko. Now we're done with renal blood flow. Let's now go to glomerular filtration. So this one class, there's a very important part of the kidney here, yung glomerulus. Now the glomerulus class would consist of a coil of approximately 8 capillary lobes referred to as the capillary tap. So ito yung glomerulus nyo class. Yan siya. Itong bilog na to. Yan. Consist siya ng 8 capillary lobes. So later, balikan natin. So the known as the capillary tuft, yung 8 lobes na yun. It is located within the Bowman's capsule, which forms the beginning of the renal tubule. Now, the glomerulus would filter the blood as it enters through the nephron, allows entry of small molecules, and prohibits large substances. Although the glomerulus serves as a non-selective filter of plasma substances with a molecular weight of less than 70,000 Dalton. So, ang glomerulus nyo class, it filters all substances. Non-selective eh. Pag sinabi mong non-selective, hindi siya choosy. So, it filters all substances as long as it's less than 70,000 Daltons. Pakitandaan yan na sa glomerulus lang yan. So, you may be wondering, sir, paano naman yung mga greater than 70,000 Daltons? Pag greater than 70,000 Daltons, there is another part na mag-filter niyan. Later, I will explain. So, pag tinanong kayo sa exam or assessment, which part of the kidney filters substances less than 70,000 Daltons, ang sagot nyo, glomerulus. Now, factors affecting filtration, we have the cellular structure of the glomerulus, specifically the capillary wall and the Bowman's capsule. We also have the glomerular pressure, hydrostatic, and oncotic pressure. Now, when we talk about hydrostatic pressure, this refers to the blood pressure class. This is the force exerted by the heart as it pumps blood. And then we have your oncotic pressure. This is maintained by plasma proteins, which are responsible for pulling water inside the blood vessel, preventing them from leaking out. And another factor affecting filtration class is the feedback mechanism of the RAAS or the renin angiotensin aldosterone system, which explained later. Let's continue. Now, what are the problems arising from non-selective permeability? Di ba nga yung glomerulus nyo, kahit ano, finifilter niya as long as 70, less than 70,000 Dalton. Since lahat na lang finifilter niya, hindi siya choosy, nagkakaroon ng mga problems. Now, one of those, whenever essential molecules like glucose, amino acid, electrolytes, they enter the glomerulus and they go to the renal tubule. Itong glucose, amino acid, and electrolytes class, mga less than 70,000 Daltons yan. So, pinifilter yan ng glomerulus nyo. And after that, it would go to the renal tubule. Now, large substances like metabolites of drugs, which are waste product, cannot enter the glomerulus. So, another part will filter them. Yung mga drugs class na malalaking hindi yan na-filter. Now, let's talk about the cellular structure of glomerulus. Plasma filtrate must pass through three cellular layers. So, yung plasma filtrate nyo, when we talk about plasma filtrate, this is the liquid portion of the blood. Basically, yung blood itself class. So, it has to pass through three cellular layers. The capillary wall membrane. This would contain endothelial cells containing pores referred to as fenestrated pores sila class. Now, the pores would increase capillary permeability. So, mag-increase yung mas madaling makaka-permeate. When you say permeate, maka-enter class, it would be easier to enter the capillary, but it does not allow the passage of large molecules and blood cells. Then the second cellular structure that wherein blood would pass through or the plasma filtrate would pass through is the basal lamina or the basement membrane. Now, and the third one is the visceral epithelium of the Bowman's capsule. Further restriction of large molecules occurs as the filtrate pass through the basement membrane and the thin membrane covering the filtration slits formed by the intertwining foot processes of the podocytes of the inner layer of the Bowman's capsule. So, ito yung Bowman's capsule nyo, class. Now, a very important part of this, dyan sa loob niyan, may mga kikita kayong thin membranes or thin membranes, itong mga thin membranes na to. Now, these thin membranes class are known as your podocyte. Ang purpose ng podocyte nyo, they further enhance the filtration of the blood. Mas madali yung filtration, allowing for more substances to be removed by the kidneys. So take note of that. Now let's talk about glomerular pressure naman, class. So the presence of hydrostatic pressure, so di ba nga yung hydrostatic pressure refers to the blood pressure, would result from the smaller size of the efferent arteriole and the glomerular capillaries would enhance filtration. This pressure is necessary, class, to overcome the opposition of pressures from fluid within the Bowman's capsule and the oncotic pressure of unfiltered plasma protein in the glomerular capillaries. By increasing or decreasing the size of the afferent arteriole, an autoregulatory mechanism within the juxtaglomerular apparatus would maintain the glomerular blood pressure at a relatively constant rate regardless of fluctuations in the blood pressure. Dilation of the afferent arteriole and constriction of the afferent arteriole when blood pressure drops prevents a marked decrease in blood flowing through the kidney, thus preventing an increase in the blood level of toxic waste. Lowering of blood pressure can lead to ischemia or depletion of oxygen in kidneys, leading to the death of organ. Likewise, an increase in blood pressure results in constriction of the afferent arteriole to prevent overfiltration or damage to the glomerulus. Okay, explain ko to class. So, yung presence ng hydrostatic pressure nyo, diba, if you recall, this is caused by the different sizes of the afferent and the afferent arteriole. Now, dahil sa maliit yung size ng afferent class, it creates this hydrostatic pressure. Very important tong hydrostatic pressure na to class because this overcomes, meaning na nalalakpasan niya yung opposition of pressures within the Bowman capsule. And kapag na surpass niya to, it will allow a better filtration ng kidneys niyo. And then take note of this class. By increasing or decreasing the size of the afferent, pag sinabi mong increasing or decreasing, dinadilate mo or kinoconstrict. So pag dinadilate mo or kinoconstrict mo to class, this allows the maintenance of glomerular blood pressure at a relatively constant rate. So para maintindihan nyo, tingnan nyo tong picture na to. Kapag mataas ang BP ng body natin, if there is an increased BP, it will trigger an auto-regulatory mechanism, meaning automatic ganito yung mangyayari. Pag mataas ang BP natin, magko-constrict yung afferent arterioles. Kapag mataas naman yung BP natin, ang mangyayari naman sa afferent arterioles, magdadilate. So take note of that. If you have an increased BP, magko-constrict yung afferent arterioles, meaning liliit siya class. It would, what's the term? It would be narrower. So, yun yung tamang term. Sorry. Wait lang. It would become narrower. And kapag naman sa efferent, it would become wider. Ngayon, kapag naman nag-decrease yung BP, ang mangyayari naman, the afferent arterioles would dilate. Lalaki pa siya lalo. While the efferent arterioles would now become narrower. So, by doing this class, na-maintain natin yung blood pressure ng body. So, preventing that, take note of this. So, by doing that, it prevents a marked decrease in blood flowing through the kidneys. So, pag dinadilate natin yung afferent arterioles and kinoconstrict natin yung efferent arterioles, we somehow prevent class too much blood flowing into the kidney. Thus, ma-prevent natin yung increase ng toxic waste production. So, that's one way. Ulitin ko ha. Whenever your afferent arterioles dilate and your efferent arterioles constrict, it prevents or it slows down blood flowing to the kidney, thus decreasing or preventing an increase in the blood level toxic waste. Kasi hindi din maganda na continuously na maraming toxic waste yung napupunta sa kidney class. It could be harmful. Kaya nga if you're an alcoholic, if you drink too much alcohol, if you abuse your body by eating too much unhealthy food, it can affect or it can lead to a disease known as your CKD. CKD is known as your glomerulonephritis. CKD or glomerulonephritis. CKD stands for chronic kidney disease. So, yan yung mga possible causes ng pwedeng mangyari. Now, lowering of blood pressure can lead to ischemia or depletion of oxygen in kidneys leading to the death of the organ. Pag sinabi mong ischemia class, walang nakakarating. There is no oxygen arriving to the organ. And remember, if there's no oxygen, it can lead to the death of the organ. Likewise, an increase in blood pressure would also result in constriction of the afferent arteriole to prevent overfiltration or damage to the glomerulus. So take note of this class. By constricting either arteriole, so gusto mong i-constrict yung afferent or efferent, this would reduce renal blood flow. Pag kinonstrict mo lang si afferent arteriole, ang marireduce lang is both renal blood flow and glomerular filtration rate. GFR stands for glomerular filtration rate. Kapag kinonstrict mo naman si efferent arteriole, it would increase or it would maintain glomerular filtration rate. So I hope that was clear. Now let's talk about the RAAS class or the renin angiotensin aldosterone system. So the RAAS class, please remember, controls the regulation of the flow of blood to and within the glomerulus. So siya yung nagme-maintain class or nagko-control ng pagpasok ng blood and paglabas ng sa glomerulus. Na the system responds to changes in blood pressure and plasma sodium content. So related siya sa BP, related siya sa sodium. So pag sodium class, this is always related to salt content. And they are monitored by the juxtaglomerular apparatus, which is consists of the following. So meron siyang juxtaglomerular cell. So ito yung mga juxtaglomerular cell. Found in the afferent arteriole and the macula densa in of the distal convoluted tubule. Main trigger is low plasma sodium. So kapag mababa ang sodium content nyo, salt content ng body nyo, the RAAS system will activate. Ang mangyayari kasi class, sodium would pull water. Where there is sodium, there is water. Kidney diseases such as salt-losing nephritis would disable the kidney to absorb salt, leading to low water retention. So kapag low yung plasma sodium nyo class, yung mga sakit na wherein there is too much, sobrang baba ng sodium nyo, this can lead to nephritis. And the problem with nephritis kasi is that you will no longer be able to absorb water. Kaya karamihan niya magmumukha kang dehydrated. So most of the time kapag mababa ang sodium nyo, di ba? Usually after a heavy exercise, yung sobrang pinagpawisan ka, your sodium content is very low. And it's also related to dehydration. Now, so low water retention can lead to low blood volume. And pag low ang blood volume mo, low din ang blood pressure mo, which is deadly. Blood pressure is very essential in maintaining glomerular filtration. So take note of the trigger class. Ang RAAS would be triggered by low plasma sodium. Pag mababa ang sodium, mababa ang water retention. Pag mababa ang water retention, mababa ang blood volume. Kapag mababa ang blood volume, mababa ang blood pressure. So ito siya. So this is how your renin angiotensin aldosterone system works class. So when the macula densa senses changes, such as yun nga, nagkaroon ng low sodium, low water retention, and kapag nagkaroon ng low water retention, magkakaroon ng low BP and low blood volume. To simplify this, pakitingnan na lang tong picture na to class. So kapag ang RAAS nyo nagka-detect ng drop in blood pressure, drop in BP, drop in blood volume, this will cause, so ito na dedetekta ng macula densa sa kidney to class. It would now cause the creation or the release of renin. Si renin nyo class, take note, is an enzyme produced by the juxtaglomerular cells. And when it is secreted class, so sinicrete na siya ng kidney, it would now pass through the blood. At the same time, class, your liver is constantly producing angiotensinogen. Si angiotensinogen now class, renin will react with the blood-borne substituent angiotensinogen producing class, it would react on angiotensinogen producing angiotensin 1. All of this class would occur sa liver, sa loob ng liver nangyayari ito. Okay? Now, after occurring in the liver, si angiotensin 1 ngayon class would now pass through the lungs, would now pass through the lungs, and inside the lungs class makaka-encounter siya ng isa pang enzyme. Ang enzyme na to is si ACE or si angiotensin converting enzyme. Si angiotensin converting enzyme class will now convert angiotensin 1 to the angiotensin 2, which is the active form. Pag sinabi mong active form, siya yung kayang mag-cause ng change, siya yung kayang mag-cause ng correction sa body natin. Now, ang ginagawa ngayon ni angiotensin 2 class, marami siyang gagawin. Marami siyang pwedeng puntahan. Ang isa sa mga pwede niyang gawin, it would now act on the adrenal gland to stimulate the release of aldosterone. Now, ano ba tong aldosterone na to? Aldosterone class is a hormone that would act on the kidney to stimulate reabsorption of salt and water. Di ba nga, kaya nga yung purpose ng RAAS mo, nag-react yan kasi mababa yung sodium, mababa yung tubig, mababa yung BP mo, mababa yung blood volume mo. So, gagawin ni aldosterone ngayon, magre-reabsorb siya. Ikikokos niya yung kidney to reabsorb more salt to more water. Okay? The second part na gagawin ni angiotensin nyo, angiotensin 2 nyo, is that it would act on the blood vessels, stimulating vasoconstriction. So, magkukos siya ng vasoconstriction sa efferent arteriole, vasodilation naman sa afferent arteriole. So, yun yung ginagawa niya. So, ito yung mga correct renal blood flow niya. Causing vasodilation of the afferent arteriole, constriction of the efferent arteriole, stimulating reabsorption of sodium and water in the PCT by the help of aldosterone. Triggering the release of sodium-retaining hormone by the adrenal cortex and ADH by the hypothalamus. Increasing blood pressure causes renin secretion, decrease 2 to 3 million glomerular filters, 120 ml water containing low molecular weight substance. So, ulitin ko class ha, para magets nyo. Si RAAS, whenever it would be activated kapag may drop sa BP or drop sa blood volume. Ang mayayari, si renin would be released from the kidney. And from the kidney, magta-travel siya, pupunta siya sa liver, may encounter niya ngayon si angiotensinogen. Renin would act on an angiotensinogen to form angiotensin 1. And then angiotensin 1 now will go to the lungs, encountering ACE, angiotensin converting enzyme. From there, class, it would now cause the creation of angiotensin 2, which is the active form. Itong active form na to would do two things. Ikokos niya yung creation ng aldosterone. Aldosterone would allow reabsorption of sodium chloride or salt and water sa kidney. And it would also cause vasoconstriction and vasodilation ng mga blood vessels. So ito another, take a look at this picture. Ito yung isa pa niyang effect. So nagkakaroon ng vasoconstriction, PCT, reabsorption of sodium. Pakitandaan to class, sodium and water are absorbed in the PCT. Then aldosterone would cause DCT, tubule reabsorption. Please take note of that. Pag PCT, sodium reabsorption lang, pero pag related siya sa aldosterone, sa distal convoluted tubule yung sodium reabsorption. And then ADH would be produced by the hypothalamus. Si ADH class is known as your antidiuretic hormone, responsible for collecting duct water reabsorption. So pakitandaan yung mga location ha. Pag sodium reabsorption related to aldosterone sa DCT, kapag water reabsorption ng ADH sa collecting ducts. Because this filtration is non-selective, the only difference between the composition of the filtrate and the plasma are the following. Absence of plasma protein, any protein-bound substances, cells, specific gravity of filtrate is 1.010, indicating that it is a chemically and ultrafiltrate of plasma. Let's go to the third one, tubular reabsorption. Now, the body cannot lose 120 ml of water containing essential substances every minute. Therefore, when the plasma ultrafiltrate enters the PCT, the nephrons, through cellular transport mechanism, begins reabsorbing essential substances and water. Kaya tayo merong tubular reabsorption class. Nire-reabsorb ng mga tubules natin sa kidney yung water because our body, take note of this, cannot lose more than 120 ml of water. So imagine if ang blood na napapump sa kidney mo is 2 liters. Kunwari lang yung 2 liters na yan, hindi yan pwedeng mawala. At the most, ang pwedeng mawala na water dun sa 2 liters na yan is only up to 120 ml. So to prevent this, yung remaining 1,880 ml na blood na dumaan sa kidney will be reabsorbed. I-reabsorb niya. And this reabsorption class would occur via two important transport mechanisms. Ang kaya siya nire-reabsorb kasi need natin makuha yung tubig saka yung essential nutrients and substances. And there are two mechanisms for that. The active and the passive transport. So when you talk about active and passive transport, let's talk about the first one, yung active transport. For active transport to occur, class, the substance to be reabsorbed must combine with a carrier protein. Pakitandaan, class, active transport substances are bound, naka-attach siya, class, or naka-combine siya sa carrier protein contained in the membranes of the renal tubular cell. So, hindi siya free substance, class. May naka-attach na protein. So the electrochemical energy created by this interaction transfers the substance across the cell membrane and back into the bloodstream. So merong nangyayaring electrochemical transfer, class, meaning nag-exert ng energy, kaya nga active. Now, the substances absorbed by active transport, class, are the following: glucose, amino acid, and salts in the PCT. So pakitandaan na kapag active transport sa PCT, pag tinanong kayo what is being reabsorbed by active transport in PCT, pakitandaan si GAS, si gas, glucose, amino acid, and salt. Pag naman tinanong kayo what is actively reabsorbed in the ascending loop of Henle naman, ang sagot nyo is chloride. And kapag DCT naman, sodium. Okay? So, ulitin ko, kapag active transport ng PCT, what is being reabsorbed is gas, glucose, amino acid, and salt. Kapag active transport sa ascending loop of Henle, chloride naman. Kapag distal, convoluted tubule, sodium. So, that's your active transport. May carrier protein, may electrochemical energy, and may mga nire-reabsorb na substances. Kapag naman passive transport, class, there is a movement of molecules across a membrane due to the differences in their concentration or electrical potential, meaning gradients, class. Dahil iba-iba yung sizes nila sa passive transport, due to their different sizes, nagtutulukan sila, class, they would push one another until they're able to pass through. So, take note yung mga substances na na-absorb. So, passive reabsorption of water takes place in all parts of the nephron. So, lahat daw ng parts ng nephron na-absorb yung water by passive reabsorption except the ascending loop of Henle, the walls of which are impermeable to water. So, lahat ng parts ng nephron is capable of passive reabsorption of water except the ascending loop of Henle. Then urea is passively absorbed in the PCT and the ascending loop of Henle. And the passive reabsorption of sodium naman, class, would occur also in the ascending loop of Henle. So, pakitandaan. Okay. The plasma concentration at which active transport stops is termed as the renal threshold. So, itong renal threshold na to, class, lahat ng substances natin merong renal threshold wherein there would be a stop. Ito lang yung tatandaan nyo. Pag naririnig nyo yung renal threshold, this refers to the stopping or the cessation of active transport reabsorption. Reabsorption. And this is very important class in the substance glucose. Diba si glucose isa yan sa mga active transported. Glucose, amino acid, and salt. Si glucose class has a renal threshold of 160 to 180. And the glucose appears in the urine when the plasma concentration reaches this level. So pakitandaan klasa, kapag ang blood, hindi natin tong last sentence. Glucose appears in the urine when the plasma concentration reaches this level. Kapag ang blood glucose mo umabot sa threshold na yan, 160 to 180 milligram per DL, what happens is that you would have glycosuria. Glyco meaning glucose, urea, urine. You would be positive for glucose in your urine. Kaya kapag nagpa-test ka ng sugar mo, kunwari diabetic ka class, if you're diabetic and your glucose is 160 to 180 or 200 milligram per DL, mataas yung chance na pati sa urine mo may glucose ka. So, very important din na aware ka. And kapag lumakpas ka ng renal threshold, most likely there is excess solute filtration. And that can cause tubular damage. Kasi sobrang dami na nung na-absorb na na glucose or na-filter na glucose beyond the threshold na. Kailangan mag-stop. Sa sobrang dami ng ni-filter, yun, nagkakaroon ng tubular damage. So, take note of this table class, pakitandaan. Ito rin yung kanina. This is just the summary. You can take a screenshot of this, you include it in there, memorize it, and it may come out in your assessment. Let's go to the fourth, let's go to tubular concentration naman class. So, renal concentrations begin in the descending and ascending loop of Henle. So, nako-concentrate yung urine nyo, yung pagdami ng nyo, in the descending and ascending loop of Henle, where the filtrate is exposed to high osmotic gradient of the renal medulla. Water is removed by osmosis in the descending loop of Henle, and sodium and chloride are reabsorbed in the ascending loop of Henle. Excessive reabsorption of water as the filtrate passes through the highly concentrated medulla is prevented by the water impermeable walls of the ascending loop of Henle. This selective reabsorption process is called the countercurrent mechanism and would serve to maintain the osmotic gradient of the medulla. The sodium and chloride leaving the filtrate in the ascending loop prevents dilution of the medullary insert tissue by the water reabsorbed from the descending loop. Maintenance of this osmotic gradient is essential for the final concentration of the filtrate when it reaches the collecting duct. The actual concentration of the filtrate leaving the ascending loop is quite low owing to the reabsorption of salt and not in water in that part of the tubule. Reabsorption of sodium continues in the DCT, but it is now under the control of the hormone aldosterone, which regulates the absorption in response to the body's need for sodium. So to explain this class ulit, excessive reabsorption of water as the filtrate passes through the medulla is prevented. So napre-prevent yung sobrang absorption ng water nyo because of the ascending loop. So thankful tayo dito sa ascending loop na to because this is impermeable to water. And because of this class, this produces the countercurrent mechanism, maintaining the osmotic gradient of the medulla. Kasi kapag wala itong process na to, imagine what would happen is that your urine will be too much diluted. sobrang baba ng osmotic gradient niya. So the sodium and chloride leaving the filtrate in the ascending loop prevents dilution. So by allowing sodium and chloride to leave the filtrate, it prevents dilution and the water reabsorbed from the descending loop. Maintenance of this gradient is essential class for the final concentration. So, yun yung basic summary niya class. The ascending loop basically prevents too much water being absorbed. Now, let's go to the collecting duct concentration. So the final concentration of the filtrate through the absorption of water begins in the late DCT and continues in the collecting duct. So from the DCT class, pupunta na yung sa collecting duct, and reabsorption would depend on the osmotic gradient in the medulla and the hormone vasopressin. Vasopressin is also known as your ADH. One would expect that as the dilute filtrate in the collecting duct comes into contact with higher osmotic concentration, passive reabsorption of water would occur. However, the process is controlled by the presence or absence of ADH, which renders the walls of the DCT and collecting duct permeable to or impermeable to water. A high level of ADH increases permeability, resulting in increased reabsorption of water and a low volume of concentrated urine. Likewise, class, absence of ADH renders the wall impermeable to water, resulting in a large volume of diluted urine. So, para maintindihan nyo, class, ito, take a look at this one. Sa last phase ng pag-concentrate ng urine nyo, a very important aspect here is related to your anti-diuretic hormone or your vasopressin. Sabi dito, class, kapag mataas ang ADH nyo, this leads to increased absorption water and a low volume of concentrated urine. So kapag mataas ang ADH, si ADH nyo class will now cause reabsorption of water. And kapag nag-reabsorb yan ng water, magdi-decrease ang urine volume. And this typically occurs when there is low body hydration. So kapag dehydrated ka class, tataas si ADH mo. So if you are dehydrated, ADH will increase, leading to decreased urine volume. Pero kapag naman hydrated ka, there is decreased ADH, leading to increased urine volume. Therefore, class, we can conclude that the final determinant of urine volume and concentration is ADH. A big factor si ADH class. Kapag mataas ang ADH, di-decrease ang urine volume. The reason again, si ADH nyo will cause reabsorption of water. So, mas marami siyang i-reabsorb na water. Kasi nga, dehydrated yung body mo in the first place. Pero kapag naman sobrang hydrated ka, inom ka ng tubig, bababa si ADH nyo. Walang reabsorption ng water, i-increase yung urine volume. So do take note of that. Let's go to the last one, the last of your renal function nyo, yung tubular secretion. Now, tubular secretion involves the passage of substances from the blood in the peritubular capillaries to the tubular filtrate of the renal tubules. It is the exact opposite of tubular reabsorption because it deals with filtering and cleaning substances from the blood rather than retaining them. So this time, hindi ka nagre-reabsorb class. You're not reabsorbing anything. Kasi di ba ang ginagawa dun sa tubular reabsorption nyo, after filtering yung mga substances, i-reabsorb niya. For tubular secretion, nire-remove siya. Now, it has two major functions. Elimination of waste products that are not filtered and regulation of the acid-base balance in the body. So, dito na nangyayari yung nare-remove class yung mga greater than 70,000 Daltons. Yung mga drugs na body natin. So, yung mga big substances that are entering our body, greater than 70,000 daltons. Now, many foreign substances cannot be filtered by the glomerulus because they are bound to plasma proteins. Their molecular weight is greater than 70,000 daltons. An example ng mga substances na to, potassium, hydrogen, ammonium ions, creatinine, urea, some hormones, and some drugs, such as the antibiotic penicillin. However, when these protein-bound substances enter the peritubular capillaries, they develop a stronger affinity for the tubular cell and dissociate from their carrier protein. So lahat ito, class, this has a carrier protein. Now, once they enter the peritubular capillaries, nai-inlove sila. They would magkakaroon sila ng attraction. They would have a stronger attraction or a stronger affinity dun sa mga tubular cells found sa peritubular capillaries. So instead of attaching sa kanilang carrier protein, iiwan nila to. Iiwan nila, magdi-dissociate sila, and pupunta sila dun sa mga tubular cells na yan, which now allows your peritubular capillaries to remove them. So, ulitin ko lahat itong mga malalaking substances na to, class, they have a carrier protein. But once they enter peritubular capillaries, nagkakaroon sila ng stronger affinity or attraction sa tubular cell, causing them to dissociate or leave their carrier protein, resulting in their transport in the filtrate by tubular cells. So, mas nare-remove na sila ng kidneys nyo. So, kung yung glomerulus nyo is responsible for less than 70,000, si peritubular capillaries nyo naman pag greater than 70,000. Specifically, sorry, meron pala, ito pala, class. The major site of removal of these non-filtered substances is the PCT, specifically the proximal convoluted tubule. So, yun yung sagot dun, class. So, pag less than 70,000 daltons, si glomerulus. Kapag greater than, si PCT. Alright, let's continue naman with the renal function test. So, renal function test is a set of analytical procedure, class, used to assess the function of the kidney. So, the first group of tests is the glomerular filtration test. So, the earliest GFR test, class, would measure urea. Pakitandaan niya na, yung pinakauna dati, yung mga luma, ang minimeasure nila urea. Then inulin, class, was the original reference method based on old studies. At present, in the current era, ang pinaka-commonly na kinimeasure sa Philippines is itong creatinine, as well as beta-2 microglobulin, cystatin C, and other radioisotopes. Pag sinabi mong radioisotopes, class, ito yung mga fluid na ipapainom sa inyo. It would be drunk by the patient, and then it would measured. So yun yung mga radioisotopes na to. Para silang mga dyes na iniinom ng patient. Now, greatest source of error is use of improperly timed urine specimen. Kaya nga, class, sa mga tests na to, you would be using 24-hour urine samples. Pag sinabi mong 24-hour urine samples, magko-collect ka ng urine for 24 hours. So, let's say nag-start ka ng 7 a.m. You have to keep collecting until 7 a.m. the next day. Now, primary substances used in clearance tests, we have your creatinine, which is commonly used here in the Philippines, beta-2 microglobulin, cystatin C, and other radioisotopes. Now, what are the disadvantages of beta-2 microglobulin, cystatin C, and radioisotopes? Itong tatlong to, class, excuse me, they are not routinely used in measuring filtration rate ng katawan natin, because they are exogenous substances not naturally produced by the body. So, hindi talaga sila present sa body natin. And if they are not present in the body, class, the result could vary pabago-bago. And it can trigger an immune response. Pag sinabi mong immune response, yung immune system mo magre-react sa mga substances na yan. Di ba nga ang katawan natin, when our body detects anything foreign, it causes our immune system to be active. So, kung nag-take ka ng mga yan, it can cause an immune response. Baka magka-fever ka, magkaroon ka ng something na sakit because of that. Now, when injected to the body, it could cause an allergic reaction. So, yun, aside from fever, it can also cause allergic reaction. It is costly and expensive. Now, let's talk about the commonly test done in the country and even other countries, yung creatinine clearance test class. So, creatinine is a waste product of muscle metabolism that is produced enzymatically by the enzyme creatine phosphokinase from creatine. So, ganito yung class para makita niyo yung reaction. Si creatine nyo, produced from the muscles, would be act on by CPK. Si CPK would cause the creation of creatinine. So, ayan siya. Normally found at a relatively constant level in the blood, thus it is being used by the laboratory as an endogenous procedure for evaluating glomerular function. So, may constant level siya sa blood class. So, aside from being tested in the urine, tinetest din siya sa dugo natin. Endogenous, it refers to a substance already present in the body. Now, for creatinine clearance class, merong dalawang formula. I want you to take note of this. There are two formulas for creatinine clearance. The first one is urine volume divided by urine creatinine and volume divided by plasma. U here stands for urine creatinine. V here would stand for urine volume in ml per minute divided by plasma creatinine and milligram per DL. While sa second formula, urine creatinine times the urine volume in ml per minute divided by plasma creatinine multiplied by 1.73 divided by A, wherein A is the body mass surface. Now, saan ba nang galing tong? You may be wondering, sir, saan ba galing tong 1.73? Yung 1.73 class, galing yan sa body surface ng katawan natin. Yan yung kanina, yung square meter. So, that's a fixed value yan sa formula na yan. Now, the normal creatinine clearance class is 120 ml per minute. But for men, 107 to 139. For women, 807 divided by ml to 107 ml per minute. Higher in males class kasi nga mas marami tayong muscle mass. So when do you use the two formulas? Gagamitin mo yung urine creatinine times the urine volume in ml per minute divided by plasma creatinine kapag ang patients mo are Asian. Kapag Asians. Pero gagamitin mo yung B, formula B, also known as the corrected creatinine clearance kapag ang patient mo is foreigner or obese. And take note, class, that the final unit of your creatinine clearance should be ml per minute. So, paki-take note yung formula, ha. Gagamitin mo yung formula A kapag ang pasyente mo ay Asian. Pero kapag foreigner or obese, doon ka sa letter B. Iko-consider mo, class, yung body surface ng tao. Bakit? Remember, kapag foreigner ka, you tend to become larger. Kapag obese ka, malamang obese ka, sobrang taba mo. So, you would have a wider body surface. So, ito, I'll give you a sample problem. A 24-year-old Cebuana submitted a 24-hour urine with a volume of 3,500 ml. Plasma creatinine of the patient is at 15 milligram per DL and her urine creatinine is 900 milligram per DL. Compute for the creatinine clearance. So whenever you encounter a problem, may equation, syempre aalamin mo muna yung mga given mo. So let's take a look at the given. Ang given mo dito, class, you have your P, your plasma creatinine is 15 milligram per DL. Your urine creatinine is 900 milligram per DL. Now, gusto mong malaman yung urine volume mo in ml per minute. Pag binasa mo to, ang volume lang is nakaset siya sa 3,500 ml. Automatic, hindi mo to pwedeng gamitin because the rule is that dapat nasa ml per minute siya. So, ang gagawin nyo, class, you need to convert this. Iko-convert mo muna ito into your ml per minute form. And to do that, the first thing you need to do is to take note of how many hours were used in collecting the urine. In this case, gumamit ka ng 24-hour urine sample. If you convert the hour to minutes, you may be questioning, Sir, bakit mo i-convert sa minute? Kasi nga, di ba, ang urine volume mo, gusto mo siya na nasa ml per minute. So, you want to convert the 24 hours into minutes. So, 24 hours times 60. Bakit 60? Kasi nga, di ba, in 1 hour, there is 60 minutes. You would now get 1,440. Ang gagawin mo ngayon, i-divide mo siya. So, 3,500 divided by 1,440. Gamit tayo ng calculator, class. You would now get 2.43 ml per minute. So, ang volume mo, .43 ml. Wait nga lang. 2.43 ml per minute. So, yan. So, alam mo na yung given mo. So, ito siya. You now apply the formula. So, 900, you have your urine creatinine times the urine volume times the urine volume divided by the plasma. So, yung urine creatinine mo is set at 900 milligram per DL. So, 900 times the urine volume, which is 2.43, divided by 15 milligram per DL, which is the plasma creatinine, you now get 145.8 ml per minute. And this is Asian class, kaya ang ginawa nyo dito, you use the first formula. So, ayan siya. That's the creatinine. And in this case, mataas to class for a female. Kasi di ba nga ang normal value ng creatinine clearance niya for women is 87 to 107. So that's the formula for creatinine clearance. Let's continue. Now, we also have to consider tubular reabsorption tests. In a renal disease, this is the first function to be affected. Concentration tests include specific gravity. So, ito gagawin nyo to class sa laboratory nyo. You're going to use specific gravity. This is most useful as a screening procedure and quantitative measurement of renal concentrating ability. SG is influenced by the number and density of the particle. To simplify this class, kapag mataas ang urine specific gravity nyo, it means that there are more solutes. Pag sinabi mong solutes, mga substances present. So, madaming sugar, madaming protein. But if it's low, urine SG, most likely diluted yung urine nyo. Kaya ang madalas pag naka-encounter kayo ng urine na 1.00 SG, do not believe na urine yan. Most likely, water yan. So, pineke ng pasyente yung sample niya or na mali ng lagay. So, take note of that class. Kapag 1.00 yung specific gravity ng urine nyo or ng sample nyo, that's water. Pero kapag mga tipong 1.005 SG, Most likely baka diluted lang yan or nagsasuffer from uh, uh, diluted samples yung patient. May sakit siya sa kidney. Then osmometry, osmolality is performed for a more accurate evaluation of renal concentrating ability. It measures only the number of particles in a solution. Now, there are obsolete tests class. Merong Fishberg test. Patients would be deprived of fluids for 24 hours before measuring specific gravity. Meron ding Mosenthal test. So, compares the volume and specific gravity of day and night urine samples to evaluate concentrating ability. Now let's talk about the test for tubular secretion and renal blood flow. So there are tests to measure tubular secretion and non filtered substances and renal blood flow. They are closely related in that total renal blood flow must be measured by a substance that is secreted rather than filtered. So sa tubular secretion nyo, yung minimeasure nyo na substance dito class is the one being secreted rather than being reabsorbed. Historically, the excretion of the dye phenol phenolsulfonane or your PSP, yun yung ginagamit dito class. The dye phenolsulfonane is being used. The test is most commonly associated with this function is the para-aminohippuric acid test or your PA test. So take note of that class. For the tubular secretion, you have the PAH test. The PAHA, itong P na to, that's para-aminohippuric acid test, which uses the dye phenolphthalein or PSP. Then there's also your titratable acidity and urinary ammonia. So normal persons would excrete approximately 70 MEq per day of acid in the form of titratable acid and hydrogen phosphate ions or ammonium ions. Test conducted as the excretion of PSP dye, para-aminohippuric acid test, titratable acidity, urinary ammonia. Si phenolphthalein nyo class and para-aminohippuric acid are both large substances that are not needed by the body. So automatically sinisecrete sila. Injected to the body to assess secretion function. So dapat lahat sila class ma-remove for you to be able to assess kung normal yung tubular secretion. Same amount of the injected substance should be excreted in the later on. So kapag ah, nag inject ka or naka-receive ka ng 1 liter niyan or 100 ml niyan, dapat sa urine mo may 100 ml din yan. If equal amounts are reflected, it means that the secretion is functional. Then we also have your titratable acidity and urinary ammonia. Measures the acidity of the urine or the number of hydrogen ions. Hydrogen ions are secreted to maintain normal blood pH. So that basically ends the lesson 1. So thank you for listening.